This coming week, March 16th, is the Festival of Purim. We read the book of Esther each year, cheering each appearance of Esther and Mordecai and booing each appearance of Haman. Esther is the heroine of the book, stepping up fearlessly to intercede with the king, declaring a fast, preparing banquets, and vanquishing Haman. Mordecai appears mainly as an accessory to Esther. Esther was raised in his house. He hovers protectively over her as she is being considered for the position of King Ahasuerus' queen. He informs her of the plot to kill all the Jews and pushes her to confront the king. This year, we are going to focus on Mordecai and his role in saving the Jewish people. I'm Brenda Cathcart, and this is a special presentation of the Voice of the Prophets. Mordecai makes his first appearance in the book of Esther when King Ahasuerus proclaims that he will choose a new queen from among the women of the empire. Esther 2:5 and 6. In Shushan the citadel, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Yair, the son of Shammai, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. Kish had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives who had been captured with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. There is a lot of information included here about Mordecai. Since nothing in the Bible is without significance, we need to examine it a little closer. The name Mordecai is apparently of Persian origin, meaning a servant of the Persian god Marduk. However, if rendered in Hebrew, it resembles the root word marah, number 4784, meaning to be bitter, or the root word radad, number 7286, meaning to beat down or tread in pieces. Hitchcock's Bible Names Dictionary defines Mordecai as meaning contrition, bitter, or bruising. It is ironic that this hero of the Jewish people would have a name meaning servant of Marduk. This was not unprecedented. Daniel and his companions had Babylonian names indicating their role in governmental service. Daniel's name, Belteshazzar, means protector of the king. So, like so much in the book of Esther, it seems that Mordecai's Hebrew name is hidden. Instead, if Mordecai were treated as if it was Hebrew, his name indicates the state of the Jewish people as being bitter, beaten down, and tread into pieces. We learn that Mordecai is descended from Yair, Shammai, and Kish from the tribe of Benjamin. The Jewish website Torah.com expands on the genealogy of Mordecai. Targum Shannai, an expansive midrashic translation of the Megillah, ca. 8th century, makes this explicit by charging Mordecai's lineage directly to Saul in its translation of 2:5. Mordecai, son of Yair, son of Shammai, son of Shemida, son of Baani, son of Ella, son of Micah, son of Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, son of Saul, son of Kish. Mordecai's relationship to Saul establishes Mordecai and his niece Esther's claim to royalty. His family was among those exiled with King Jeconiah. It also sets up Mordecai's upcoming conflict with Haman, who is descended from King Saul's greatest opponent, King Agag of the Amalekites. The Amalekites were the first people to attack the children of Israel as they came up out of Egypt. God said that they would be a foe of Israel in every generation. At the time of King Saul, God instructed Saul to completely destroy the nation. 1 Samuel 15:2 and 3. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I will punish Amalek for what he did to Israel, how he ambushed him on the way when he came up from Egypt. Now go and attack Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, infant and nursing child, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. King Saul did not follow God's instructions, and this led to Saul's downfall. He spared the life of Agag as well as the livestock. Although Samuel killed Agag, some of the Amalekites escaped, including a child of Agag's who became the forefather of Haman. Mordecai was entrusted with bringing up his brother's daughter Hadassah, whose Persian name was Esther. When she was selected as one of the virgins to be considered for the position of queen, Mordecai hovered protectively over her. Esther 2:11. And every day Mordecai paced in front of the court of the women's quarters to learn of Esther's welfare and what was happening to her. Esther ends up being selected as the new queen of Persia. Although Esther did not reveal her relationship with Mordecai, it appears that through her favor, Mordecai was given an official government position. Esther 2:19 and 20. When virgins were gathered together a second time, Mordecai sat within the king's gate. Now Esther had not revealed her family and her people, just as Mordecai had charged her, for Esther obeyed the command of Mordecai as when she was brought up by him. A lot of official business of a city or nation was conducted in the gates of a city. For example, the residents of Sodom taunted Lot about sitting in the gates of Sodom as a judge. Abraham purchased the cave for Sarah's burial tomb in the gates of the city of Hebron. Boaz accepted his obligation as the kinsman redeemer for Ruth and Naomi in the gates of the city of Bethlehem. So Mordecai had an official position, which could have been from recording business transactions to judging disputes. While there, Mordecai learned that 2 eunuchs who were guardians of the threshold plotted to kill the king. Esther 2:21. In those days, while Mordecai sat within the king's gate, 2 of the king's eunuchs, Bigthan and Teresh, doorkeepers, became furious and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. Our modern translations tell us that Bigthan and Teresh were doorkeepers. The use of this term causes us to miss the significance of their position. They were to guard the threshold, which represents the threshold covenant. Anyone who crossed the threshold without permission or with the intent to harm anyone within the threshold is in violation of the most basic covenant agreement in the ancient Near East. By exposing this plot, Mordecai and Esther have placed King Ahasuerus under covenant obligation to them. Esther 2:23. And when an inquiry was made into the matter, it was confirmed, and both were hanged on a gallows, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles in the presence of the king. Although the details of the plot against the king and Mordecai's actions in exposing the plot were recorded, this obligation was forgotten or concealed. Sometime after this, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman to a position above all of the officials who served in the king's gate. Esther 3:1. After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes who were with him. Haman was the descendant of King Agag of the Amalekites. With his rise to power, we have a reenactment of the conflict between King Saul and King Agag. At stake is the fate of the entire Hebrew race. Although the king commanded that all the other officials bow to Haman, Mordecai refused to do so. Esther 3:2 and 3. And all the king's servants who were within the king's gate bowed and paid homage to Haman, for so the king had commanded concerning him. But Mordecai would not bow or pay homage. Then the king's servants who were within the king's gate said to Mordecai, "Why do you transgress the king's command?" The Bible tells us that Mordecai was asked why he didn't bow to Haman. However, the answer is not given to us. That, along with many other things in the book of Esther, is hidden from us. The Stone Edition Tanakh tells us that bowing to an official is not against Torah, as we may think. Normally, Mordecai would have bowed in accordance with the king's instructions, for bowing to a king or his official is not forbidden by Torah law. Mordecai refused to bow either because Haman declared himself divine, Rashi, or because Haman's robes were decorated with idols, Ibn Ezra. In either of these cases, bowing to him would be an act of idolatry. This is reminiscent of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who refused to bow down and worship the statue of King Nebuchadnezzar. When Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to worship the statue, other Babylonian officials, jealous of the influence the Hebrews had on the king, accused them before Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel 3:12. There are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the gold image which you have set up. In this case, only Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were targeted and condemned to death. However, in the case with Mordecai, Haman took out his anger on all the Jewish people. Esther 3, 5, and 6. When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow or pay him homage, Haman was filled with wrath. But he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had told him of the people of Mordecai. Instead, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews who were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, the people of Mordecai. Haman accused not just Mordecai, but all of the Jewish people before the king. However, he concealed the identity of the people he was accusing, calling them merely a certain group of people. Esther 3:8. Then Haman said to King Ahasuerus, "There is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from all the other peoples, and they do not keep the king's laws. Therefore it is not fitting for the king to let them remain." King Ahasuerus, perhaps sensitive to treachery from within the empire because of the earlier plot against him by Bigthan and Teresh, readily agreed to sign a decree that all of the Jews would be killed on the 13th day of Adar, 11 months from the date the decree was signed. When news of the decree was made public, Mordecai, along with all the Jews, put on sackcloth and ashes and cried out in despair. Esther 4, 1 and 2. When Mordecai learned all that had happened, he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes and went out into the midst of the city. He cried out with a loud and bitter cry. He went as far as the front of the king's gate, for no one might enter the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. Mordecai sent Esther to bring the case of the Jews before the king. As Esther is preparing her case, softening up the king by honoring him with a banquet, Mordecai's role in exposing the earlier plot against the king comes to the king's attention. It seems that the king couldn't sleep that night and was reading the book of records of the Chronicles, Esther 6, 2 and 3. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, the doorkeepers who had sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. Then the king said, "What honor or dignity has been bestowed on Mordecai for this?" And the king's servants who attended him said, "Nothing has been done for him." The king commanded that Haman dress Mordecai in a royal robe and parade him on horseback throughout the city, proclaiming that the king honored Mordecai. Oh, what humiliation! Haman was forced to honor Mordecai, who had refused to bow in honor of him. The connection to the Antichrist and Messiah is unescapable. Those who refuse to bow and worship the beast will be sentenced to death. Revelation 13:15. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. However, God turns it around, and the beast is forced to proclaim that Yeshua is Lord to the glory of the Father. Philippians 2, 9 through 11. Therefore God also has highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, of those in heaven and of those on earth and of those under the earth, and that every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father. After Haman is forced to honor Mordecai, everything goes wrong for Haman. Esther reveals that Haman had plotted to kill her, the king's bride, and all of her people. Haman is revealed as an adversary. Esther 7, 5 and 6. So King Ahasuerus answered and said to Queen Esther, "Who is he and where is he who would dare presume in his heart to do such a thing?" And Esther said, "The adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman." So Haman was terrified before the king and queen. In the end times, many will be deceived and follow the Antichrist. Yeshua warns his followers to watch carefully so they won't be deceived. Matthew 24:24. For false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. The king ordered that Haman be killed and hung on the gallows that Haman had erected for Mordecai. Esther 7:9-10. Now Harbona, one of the eunuchs, said to the king, "Look, the gallows, 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke good on the king's behalf, is standing at the house of Haman." Then the king said, "Hang him on it." So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the king's wrath subsided. The king elevated Mordecai to the position previously held by Haman. When he went out from the king, he was clothed in royal garments. Esther 8:15. So Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, with a great crown of gold and a garment of fine linen and purple, and the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. Notice that the whole city of Shushan was glad, not just the Jews. The Jews across the empire rejoiced in their deliverance. We read that many of the people became Jews because they feared or were in awe of the Jews. However, the decree to kill all the Jews was still in force and could not be canceled. The king issued a new decree allowing the Jews to fight back. Their deliverance was not handed to them. They had to fight for it. When that day came, Jews across the land rose up against their enemies. Esther 9:2-5. The Jews gathered together in their cities throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus to lay hands on those who sought their harm. And no one could withstand them because fear of them fell upon all the people. And all the officials of the provinces, the satraps, the governors, and all those doing the king's work helped the Jews because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. For Mordecai was great in the king's palace, and his fame spread throughout all the provinces. For this man Mordecai became increasingly prominent. Thus the Jews defeated all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, with slaughter and destruction, and did what they pleased with those who hated them. When the children of Israel gathered at the entrance to the promised land on the plains of Moab, fear fell on all their enemies. King Balak of Moab sought to kill them by deceiving them into worshiping other gods. The people of Jericho locked their gates because fear of the God of the children of Israel. The fear that came on the enemies of the Jews was the fear of God. Moses spoke of the fear of the Lord that will come upon Israel's enemies when they are serving the Lord. Leviticus 26:7-8. You will chase your enemies, and they shall fall by the sword before you. 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 of you shall put 10,000 to flight. Your enemies shall fall by the sword before you. Mordecai and the Jewish people defeated their enemies who fell in fear before them. Afterwards, King Ahasuerus promoted Mordecai to second in command in Persia. Not only was he accepted among the Jews, the people of the land also received him. Esther 10:3. For Mordecai the Jew was second to King Ahasuerus and was great among the Jews and well received by the multitude of his brethren, seeking the good of his people and speaking peace to all his countrymen. Mordecai, whose Hebrew name is hidden from us, whose good deeds were concealed, and his people hidden, is revealed as the deliverer of his people. He is honored among both Jew and Gentile. He doesn't seek his own gain, but seeks the good of the people over whom he rules. He rules with justice and righteousness. Yeshua, whose identity of Messiah has been hidden from his people, will be revealed. He will be the deliverer of both Jew and Gentile, and he will rule in justice and righteousness. I'm Brenda Cathcart for Moed Ministries International. Shalom and be blessed.